Hello, 7th graders. It's Miss Ditmar here. Today I'm going to be talking about comparing fractions. So there's three things we're going to do. We're going to find simplest form, equivalent fractions, and then comparing using less than, greater than, or equals. Alright? So we're working with fractions today. There's a couple of vocabulary words that I want to remind you of first. If I have this fraction right here, I've got 3/5. Alright? The 3 is the numerator, that's the number on top. And then the 5 would be the denominator, the number on the bottom. Alright, so numerator is the top, denominator is the bottom. Alright, so simplest form. So fractions in simplest form, when its numerator and denominator have no common factors other than 1. So let's take a look and see what that means. Alright, if I'm trying to put 22/100ths into simplest form, I'm going to look at the two of them. They both have common factors. They're both divisible by 2. So if I divide both the top and the bottom by 2, right, what do I get? Well, 22 divided by 2 is 11, and 100 divided by 2 is 50. The only factor of 11 is 1 and 11. Neither of those goes into 50, so I'm done. 11/50ths is simplest form for 22/100ths. Let's look at another one. 44/55ths. All right? What number goes into both 44 and 55? 11 goes into both, right? 44 divided by 11 is 4. 55 divided by 11 is 5. So 4/5 would be my simplest form. Let's take a look at another one, 19/36. If I'm trying to think of factors of 19, it's just 1 and 19. So there's nothing that I can do to this one. All right, I can't simplify it. So if I was asked to simplify 19/36, I would simply write 19/36. It's as simple as it can get. Alright, let's look at these. If I have 64/88ths, you might look at that and realize right away that 8 is a common factor of both of those. 64 divided by 8 gives me 8, and 88 divided by 8 gives me 11. So some of you are going to see that right away. I, on the other hand, when I have even numbers, I just like to keep dividing by 2. 64 divided by 2 and 88 divided by 2, that gives me 32/44ths. They're both still even. I can still divide it by 2 on both top and bottom. And now I get 16/22. Still two even numbers, so if I divide by 2 again, I get a 8/11ths. 11 is no longer an even number, and the only factors of 11 are 1 and 11, so I am done. So I did 64/88ths, dividing top and bottom both by 8 right away, got 8/11ths. But if you didn't see that, and you just saw that you could divide by 2, you can keep dividing by 2 until you get to your final answer, 8/11ths. Alright, you try these two, 8/32 and 14/35. See what you get for those two, alright? Alright, 8/32. Both 8 and 32 are divisible by what number? They're both divisible by 8, right? So I would get 8 divided by 8 is 1, 32 divided by 8 is 4. 8/32 can be simplified to 1/4. What about 14 and 35? What's the least, the smallest common factor that they have? They both have a common factor of 7, right? So 14 divided by 7 and 35 divided by 7 gives me 2/5. Alright, fractions are equivalent. We're going to move on now from simplest form to equivalent. They're equivalent if they are identical when they're in simplest form, so I have to know how to do my simplest form to see if they're equivalent. Alright, so if I give you two fractions, I need to see if those are equivalent. First I need to think, how can I simplify 24 sixtieths? Well, 24 and 60 are both divisible by 12. All right, so I'd have 2/5, and 4 and 6 are both divisible by 2. So those would simplify to 2/5, and 4/6 would simplify to 2/3. So are those equivalent? No, they're not. They do not have identical simplest forms. Let's look at these two. 24 sixtieths, which I just did up above, so I know that simplest form is 2/5, and then 4/10. 4 and 10 are both divisible by 2. 4 divided by 2 gives me 2, and 10 divided by 2 gives me 5. 2/5 and 2/5. Are those equivalent? Yes, they are. All right, let's try another one. Some new numbers here. 15 27ths and 20 36ths. 15 and 27 are both divisible by 3. So 15 divided by 3 and 27 divided by 3, that would give me 5/9. And 20 and 36 are both divisible by 4. So 5/9 and 5/9. Are those equivalent? Yes, they are. All right. So that's if I'm given two fractions and I have to find out if they're equivalent. But what about if I'm just given a fraction like 3/7 and I need to create other equivalent fractions? I'm going to do that by multiplying the numerator and denominator of a fraction by the same number. All right? So if I want to find an equivalent fraction to 3/7, I could just multiply the top and bottom both by 2. And I would get 3 times 2 is 6, 7 times 4 is 14, so 6/14. If I need another equivalent fraction, I can just multiply both top and bottom by 3. 3 times 3 is 9, 7 times 3 is 21, so 9/21. And I can keep going. I could multiply both the top and the bottom by 4. All right, as long as I'm doing the same number on the top and bottom. So this is going to give me 12/28. All right, so we've done some simplifying. We found equivalent fractions. Now we're going to compare fractions. All right, when I'm comparing fractions, I want you to first make their denominators match. This is called finding the least common denominator. Least common denominator. So if I'm comparing 3/8 and 5/12 using greater than, less than, or equals, all right, to do that, I'm going to find their least common denominators. So first, I need to figure out, I'm going to look at my denominator, right? It's right there, denominator. Multiples of 8. Well, multiples of 8 are 8, 16, 24, 32, 40, 48, 56, and it just goes on and on. I'm counting by 8s. And then I'm going to look at my other denominator, my 12, and I'm going to find some multiples of 12. So 12, 24, 36, 48, 60, and on and on and on. And then I'm going to look for the least common denominator. So least is smallest, common means what do they share, and denominator, 8s or the multiples of 8s and 12s. So the least common denominator that I could use, or the smallest common multiple, would be 24. All right, so I'm going to rewrite these. I'm going to take my 3/8 and I'm going to make it so it's equivalent to something over 24. Well, what do I have to do to the 8 to get it to be 24? I'm going to multiply it by 1, 2, 3. If I multiply the bottom by 3, I multiply the top by 3. I'd get 9/24. For 5/12, I have to multiply 12 by 2 to get to 24. So I'm going to multiply my 5 by 2 also and get 10/24. So now I can compare these. I have 9/24 and 10/24. I'm going to compare the numerators since they have a common denominator. The 10 is bigger than the 9. So if I'm comparing these with my greater than, less than, or equals than symbol, I would say and I'm going to use my 3/8 and my 5/12. That 3/8 is less than 5/12 because 9/24 is less than 10/24. All right, you try these few. All right, two where we're comparing, and then one where you need to order from least to greatest. All right, work those out on your notes, answer those questions, and then you've got one more slide. All right, last two questions. What did you learn or were you reminded of? And what question or questions do you still have?